do that.
Oh, it's going to be very good. Oh, it's a good angle right there.
It's my wife.
Oh no.
No, I was going to actually capture my just say, I want this tall.
Oh, gotcha.
So we can tell you.
What do you?
Yeah.
I don't want to know.
Sorry about the Syria thing, by the way, as well. I was like,
You're not about to start talking.
oh, we didn't actually do Syria.
No, we're just spending Antonio.
But like,
You put the wrong side of this topic.
Oh, thank God that was terrible.
No.
I have such
Allegedly.
All right, everybody good?
Let me make sure I have
Yeah, no problem.
the.
Man, Adam just barely made sure that I got.
I've got all of what I need. This is
This is not an 8-minute speech. You good? Cool. Congrats, Oregon. Thanks, Whitman. The observation 1 is the resolution analysis. The input is resolution. The EPA should regulate CO2 gases, reduce global climate change. The B support is the ratio of the criteria and net benefits of the possible. The observation 2 is the inherency. The A support is the EPA is working on new regulations to limit the emissions on existing CO2 power plants to the status quo. The B support is that Obama said in the State of the Union that he was going to that he thought climate change was a serious issue that demanded immediate attention. There's been no decisive action on no decision on exactly what action is going to be taken. Thus, observation 3 the plan text. The EPA should regulate CO2 gases to reduce global climate change by enacting regulations substantially limiting CO2 emissions from emissions from existing United States power plants. The EPA should regulate CO2 gases to reduce global climate change by enacting regulations substantially limiting CO2 emissions from existing United States power plants. Funding reports for Federal needs. Yes, all.
U.S. plants again?
Yep. Observation 4, solvency number 1 is that EPA solves empirically proven. The first argument is that they were able to successfully ban DDT in the 70s. The second argument is that the cap and trade scheme for SO2 gases was actually successful in the early 90s. The third argument here is that the second overall solvency argument is that increases in renewable energy makes this possible right now. The ace point is that California specifically proves they have cap and trade system in place and they have had emissions reductions for the third consecutive year. The ace point here is that the national numbers actually prove. Bloomberg indicates that the percent of energy from renewables is up 3% and coal and oil are down 4.5% to 2.6% respectively. The third argument is that climate is very friendly to it. We've actually reduced 13% of our emissions total. 13% of our emissions total around 1994 levels. Advantage 1, give a hoot, don't pollute. The ace point is the number one emissions are growing. Status quo. The ace point is that global temperatures and emissions both peaked in 2012. The visa point is that global temperatures have actually increased 0.9% according to the UN, which is reaching the 4-degree threshold that's needed to avert catastrophic global warming. The CISA point is the recent talks in Doha actually failed, so there's not going to be any forthcoming global action unless we do something like plan. The second argument is that particularly matter is actually killing people. Status quo. The World Health Organization indicates it kills 50,000 people in America from every year. Particularly matter from CO2 gases creates respiratory problems which kill people probably. The number is actually millions worldwide. The third argument is that power plants are a big source of producing. The ace point is in 2012 they produced 2.2 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide in the United States. The visa point is that coal-fired power plants are 40% of the United States' overall CO2 emissions. The C argument here, the fourth argument here is that now is the key time to act. And the ace point is that nature and climate change, which is a scientific journal, indicates we have till 2016 to stop our emissions from increasing. Anything beyond that's going to cause runaway global warming. We still have time, but now's the time to act. The point is that lag times between CO2 emissions and the ensuing increase in temperatures actually mean that if we were to stop our emissions, we'd have time to act through carbon capture and other technologies. But we need to be acting soon. The CISA point is that the global climate change regime is absolutely not solving the status quo. The talks of Doha failed. There's not going to be a fundamental action. We need to establish a global regime that's actually going to be effective. The decent point is that the State of the Union makes this particularly key argument. If we pass a bold policy in the wake of the State of the Union, it actually looks like Obama's talking a serious game. It looks like the United States is making a shift towards actually being effective on climate change. The decent point is the link argument. The first argument is that we'd actually decrease CO2 gases. We stop people from polluting as many, so they naturally go down. The second argument is that this would always allow for cooperation with other international regimes. People aren't cooperating right now because the United States is seizing an advantage by not decreasing its own emissions, which is which is always going to be devastating. The third argument is that it signals investment in green technologies. actually going to be rewarded. We've always been stopping and starting our investment in green technology. We've always been stopping and starting our investment in green technology. We create signals that the prices of other technologies are going to become comparatively more expensive, which increase investment and move them along the cost curve, making them cost effective with coal energy or with dirty energy over time. The fourth argument is the plan would necessarily be modeled in other areas. The season one is the internal links. Number one is the United States is key because the United States is a massive overall polluter. The second argument is the cooperation is always going to be key because we need to get other countries who are massive polluters to be able to reduce their own climate change as well. The next argument is the technology specifically key because it's the only way to prevent emissions over the long term. The next argument is the decent point is the impacts. The first is global warming. A massive increase in global warming would actually destroy coastal agricultures, which would be terribly devastating. Millions of people would die of starvation because it would destroy massive stocks of global food. Global warming, global climate change, and continued emissions would also lead to the death of phytoplankton because of the rising acidity levels in the ocean that would be resultant from the pollutions that are actually being emitted. The third argument here is particulate matter. Particulate matter deaths are happening in the status quo, and can only be stopped by reducing our CO2 emissions. This is a type of structural violence because the type of people who are actually always being killed by these are people who are empirically disadvantaged. You have an obligation to act on this. EU relations. First argument is the ace point is uniqueness. The first argument is the United States-EU relations are collapsing status quo. The first argument is that we actually just forced them to stop taxing United States airliners under their own laws. This is seen as favoring United States businesses. Over our combined interests. They have regulation on airline emissions, and we are insisting that they not apply to our airlines that are operating in Europe. The second argument is that EU airlines actually feel they're being squeezed out, which means that they're putting a bunch of domestic pressure on their governments to do something about this, to put pressure on the United States. Third argument is the United States unwillingness to take action on global climate change is perceived as negative because they've isolated as something that they think is important, and because it looks like the United States is trying to gain an advantage over them and squeeze them out. The fourth argument is that the EU actually just passed a massive increase in the cost of financial transactions between the countries. The Treasury Department said Treasury Department actually came out against it, which indicates that it's going to be bad for relations. The fifth argument is that now's the key time. The State of the Union address from the other argument applies. The other argument is that we're negotiating a trade deal with the European Union. It's going to be talks later this year, but you would absolutely collapse these bilateral trade talks. These one is link level. The number one argument is the work in session in Europe. We actually remedy the things that are harming our relations now, so we can always solve back to relations. The second argument is that we relieve the domestic pressure because it is perceived as the advantage being evened out and people not being at a disadvantage anymore. And we solve their concerns. The C point is the internal link. You would manufacturing is unstable and status quo. We need a partnership with the European Union. They would be able to buy massive amounts of our exports. The second argument is that we secure our agricultural leadership because we cooperate with them so much. The third argument is that it would standardize international property laws, which would always be key to our technological development specifically. It would also allow for general check sharing. The decent point is all of these are key to our economic advantage, which is absolutely necessary for our hegemony. The index of hegemony are avoiding ally free. A world where U.S. hegemony collapses, our allies would always engage in rapid and opaque proliferation. It's also key to deterring challengers. China goes in the same cacao as Russia goes in the Arctic.
I have a question for you. So the second claim that you make in the science advantage, you say that global temperature has increased 0.9%. What in the world does that mean? Is that in Celsius, Fahrenheit? Tell us what measurement?
In Celsius.
Also, since when?
Since
what is the timeline of comparison?
I'm not sure since when. It's increased from the averages before all the bad warming stuff, probably.
So average room temperature is
28
degrees Celsius.
28 degrees Celsius.
28 degrees Celsius. Temperature has increased 0.9 degrees since you don't know when.
Yeah.
Do you understand that this is scientifically unfeasible?
I mean, I just read the warrant, right? I didn't do the study.
I of the science that is creating the warrant. Where in the world did this statistic come from?
That was a article that I read that was citing a UN article or a UN study.
Was wrong.
But that's certainly possible.
All right.
I mean,
Yeah. Okay. The order. Do I have another sheet for this one?
no.
Okay.
Well,
No, nothing.
it's particularly infuriating because I always pretend to know so much about science.
I have 3 in the case.
3.
You want to write the other one? Oh, okay.
I'll include the cells and then tell me.
That's right.
That includes all of these. Oh, yeah, I got that.
Okay. Can I have it?
Yeah.
Alright.
Nice.
You're free in case.
Everybody's asking if
Does
that
that
includes
include
solvency.
solvency?
No, it'll be just on the advantage.
That's not where I was telling both of us to touch.
Okay. Yeah. There it is. I want that. Alright. Framework first argument for the plaintiff's vehicle discussing justification. This means the methodology to its former support rating political question theory underpins enforced practices which means that it is necessary that we evaluate the political file, that we evaluate your methodology before we evaluate the political consequences of the 1AC links. First argument is the 1AC regulation of CO2 is the new green space on the liberalism and relies on reduction of spatial exhaust on the environment and is intrinsically linked to the political management of life because it creates an ideal relationship between people's personal environment. This normalization affects the legal rules of the 1AC prescribes an ideal citizenship, the council values for stewardship, which means the alternative perspective of the environment, harmony, or subjugated to the exclusion of the knowledge base. This their clause, second, and their call for green energy is a proprietary declaration of the state of emergency with that creates an ethical collective action that the government uses as a crisis management to create effects on the level of population, justifying universal control. This since the explosion which was not fit into the blueprint, the sacrifice for the action of the state. Third is the capacity fatigue. Their enforcement degree pulses his lip service at best, and it ignores the effect of the foundational environmental effects of media spin, creates attention, but it also faces resource-in-case the impacts. First is genocide. The sovereign power and functions via exclusion goes beyond the relationship between life and death to value certain forms of life when the sovereign is charged with the protection of the common. This justifies valuing the good life and devaluing those perceived as threats. The life is creates genocide is an attempt to ethically cleanse and purify the population there. Well, inevitably be violent, sick, and fair life. You devalue population so those who are not immediately destroyed or have rights to bring the worst traffic. The individuals are used as tools for the elite. This means by sending media the individuals are reduced to bodies to be exploited. Human shed. You got human rights are shed to become machines. This economics lifetime change the you make. Infinite destruction of humans is possible to me. Pawns and they are pawns capable of being sacrificed next to extinction wars of which the level of civilians and sovereign individual focus means the death is inherent in the level of the population. This makes assets inevitable because it created this example is created the creation of sophisticated killing machines like nuclear weapons or obsession with overriding control of the death of the entire population. This inevitably creates extinction because the concept for peace destroys the understanding of what peace means in the absence of war, which means that episodes of peace and war are justified for continued dominant control, which means this is inherently violent. The alternative. Oh, I had it, sorry. Vote not apt to reject the biopolitical assumptions of the 1AC and endorse the active criticism that is the LOC. Vote not apt to reject the biopolitical assumptions of the 1AC and endorse the active criticism that is the LOC. There's your copy. It's additional. Do you have any questions? They can be taken in cross-text. Solvency. First, the universal intellectual practices by any only buttresses by a policy. Civic intellectual experiences constantly on call because it pushes the points on which the power is exerted on modern society. Individual actions all because of the societal norms are created within the acceptance of there is no standard power, which means that it can be constructed from any point in institutional focus fails because it obscures power relations by focusing on a larger system of dominations that individual action is also because of our unconditional faith in these institutions that we cannot be critical of. Next. Uniqueness first argument is one against the anti-business tolerance index search by 50% of free there indicates the capital expenditure plans and investment in the number of businesses they rated because of government policies have increased from 25% from December to 17% from January. For our statistics, the MSP is an all-inclusive study that includes study of all factors because of need and because it takes general sentiment and financing and hiring and firing and finances and capitalism and expectations into account means that its most inclusive index is small business optimism index increased to 88.9% in January and small businesses were expanding the status quo and jobless rate has decreased significantly since February, and manufacturing increased. The Federal Reserve in New York said the economic index increased 10% to a high point since May, which means that the rebound is driven by new forces. The cause of this means it's made possible that the consumer confidence increase. Next is the links first. The plan is unexpected Obama signal the long legislative process to determine what would be an ideal action for climate change, and the plan is perceived as unilateral Obama action, which kills the trust in the business sector, and the plan looks like retribution for the battles in the budget and confirmation process, and business is also perceived in future cause over litigation and technological change, which means they stop investment. The National Association of Manufacturers said that 20% of expenses you manufacture 20% of more expensive. Manufacturers within the U.S. with the regulations of the 1AC and businesses want to wait and see what will happen in a world that is result of regulations before they actually invest. These are linked to the line of investment in this and short term. The manufacturing decline and decrease in and reduction in employment and consumer confidence. The lack of investment in new products means that you stop hiring on new project development. That consumer confidence is the internal link to the economy because it accounts for 70% of U.S. economic action. The impact is economic decline, which causes double-leak recession. It's makes it impossible for us to trade materials because we're not only development of the great technology, it's totally linked to data too. It also makes it focus on the environment, but because you don't focus on the environment, the world of economic class means that you don't have solvency for advantage one in a global economy. And the global economy declines in the world of U.S. economic decline because 40 literally starve to death, that is incredibly dehumanizing nature of suffocates itself from the inside out, and also wars are inevitable in the world of the one AC because there are no economic ties, which means that extinction happens inevitably because you do not have ties that are checked by economic relations. Next. Oh, I was going to read that. Okay. Okay. The EPA should convene a collaborative public policy process including all interested stakeholders, which is about whether the EPA should regulate CO2 gases to reduce global climate change by enacting regulations
Consult businesses.
to substantially limit CO2 emissions for existing United States power plants. Again, the EPA should convene a collaborative public policy process including the interested stakeholders, which is about the one I see. There's your copy and your one I see. First recommendation of the counterplate increase the EPA has an administrative structure where the options for enforcing regulations unilaterally or via collaboration. They can use mediators from the government on an alternative dispute resolution office, and the counterplate functions competitively. The counterplate is functionally competitive. It severs the MEDC, the one AC, and the negotiations of the enforcement of the regulation, and the severs the certainty of the one AC because it empowers and empowers and corporations to have influence in the policy making and solve this and solve this laws. It brings invested stakeholders to the table, which means there's a form for partnership between the government, civil society, and private citizens, and the counterplate increases the knowledge about regulation, increase the capacity or enforcement 90% of environmental regulations are violent because ignorance, not because of malice. Next is the counterplate's unique opportunity to create valuation via liberating segregated knowledge and exchanging narratives of people in diverse societies, and the counterplate avoids business competitively because it invites all businesses and gives them an active role, which means that they can the laws that govern their institution combined, which means that they're not which means that they can build trust between the government and the rest of society, and the counterplate allows individuals in civil society to act to enforce, which means that watchdog, which means that it solves everyone's charge because it solves watchdogs and the regulations. Next. I'm gonna go.
Yeah,
Okay. Advantage one. First recommends that you don't solve China, India, Russia, corporations that still pollute or refiners who cause the most carbon emissions, or you don't solve methane, which is significantly worse than CO2 because it lingers in the atmosphere for longer. Also, carbon lingers in the atmosphere for centuries and is non-quantifiable, which means that you can't measure the amount of emissions decrease that is necessary. Also, you don't give an amount, which means that you don't have an internal link to being able to solve your advantage. Also, you're nebulous on the question of how global temperature is inclined. Your science is just wrong. Also, an alternative technology solves your after solar technology, Dutch electric cars, and France solar, and France Japan solar and France nuclear all are capable of solving the emissions of the 1AC, which means that if your EU impacts an advantage one on advantage two are correct, then they are probably capable of solving advantage one on a faster time rate because they already have the infrastructure in place. And climate change is not modeled internationally. Climate change legislation is not modeled internationally because it relies on the context of local environmental and economic laws, which means that it can't easily be moved, which means there is enormous time period delayed to the affirmative at best, or you're incapable of solving world climate emissions on advantage two. First argument is U.S. climate change regulation is coming right now. The advantage nevertheless is solving the status quo, and the advantage is not reverse causal, which means that it results from other action. Also, lateral talks are coming right now in the legislation. There's only a risk that the U.S. creates problems by enacting uncertain business regulations, and the interim means that you're incapable of solving this. Also, hold them to a higher threshold on their impact analysis. There, we should get a lot of flexibility in terms of answering that hedge scenario.
Yeah, I do. No.
You guys have something to do, right? They say slightly different things.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So this is the
I thought you were talking to me.
on
I'm like,
Actually, you're gonna eat it and then become Amazons. This feels what I'm talking about.
No, you're good.
The order. We give the criticism. BizCon. Actually, criticism, counterclaim, BizCon.
Yes.
Actually, BizCon, counterclaim, I'm sorry. Criticism, BizCon, counterplan, advantage one, new sheet, advantage one, advantage two.
New sheet, then advantage 1?
And then advantage 2. Oh, what? I need that. On the criticism on all of their method comes first argument there, I'm giving you absolutely no warrants on why methodology would ever come first. Also, the entirety of the 1AC is a reason that we have good methodology, and those are all defenses of our methodology. So that means that the policy making of the 1AC is always going to come first. Also, searching for the best methodology is always going to lead to a race at the bottom. It also means there's never going to be any it's always going to paralyze problem solving because you have to search for the best methodology, which is always going to lead to a world of nihilism. No one has the ability to act because everyone's just searching and questioning their methodology all the time. That means the entirety of the case, and any reason why action is good is always going to be a dis. And the next argument is the biopower is absolutely inevitable. Healthcare exists in the United States. Also, the fact that we have things like traffic lights in the government that gives assistance and government watches what we do. That means that not only in a world of environmental regulation is going to happen, also they're conceding arguments about how other countries throughout the world, like the EU and like China, are doing environmental regulations. That means that biopower, in terms of environmental regulations, happens with or without the plan. They're not making any arguments about why this instance uniquely is key. Also, we can tell you that biopower is actually a good thing. It's always going to be key to safety. It's key to things like traffic lights, which prevent a lot of people from dying from traffic accidents. It's also going to be key to social services, which keep a bunch of people from dying as a result of poverty. It's also social services are also probably key to the economy. We tell you it's also key to healthcare, which prevents massive amount of people from dying. It's also key to vaccines, which we then export elsewhere, which means all the impacts of people dying go massive and global. Also, managerialism and biopower in terms of the environment is always going to be inevitable because at this point we can't solve what we've already done. I mean, we'll always try to manage the environment biopolitically, and it's always good for all of the reasons of the 1AC. The entirety of the 1AC is always going to be a disadd to the alternative. They say that the state of emergency is bad, but the state of emergency is actually good when it's true, when we're actually taking an action to avert crisis. That means that's always a unique reason why the state of emergency is going to be good. We're key to preventing the impacts that we say happen as a result of the 1AC. Also, we say that acting as a result of exigencies are always good because that leads to saving lives. It also leads to avoiding things like war. It's also going to be key to human assistance, which is always going to be important to saving lives. Also, they say the individual action is going to be able to solve the alternative, but they're just wrong. They can't solve the structural, the fact that biopower exists structurally, and they can't solve this. They also don't tell you what a world looks like in a world of the alternative. We tell you the biopower still exists. That means they don't get any ability to solve this. The next argument is PERM do both, or PERM do the plan and reject biopolitical assumptions. PERM do the plan and reject biopolitical assumptions. We tell you that the PERM always solves in this it always solves because it includes the entirety of the alternative, and the entirety of the plan is also always going to be theoretically legitimate. We also tell you the Butler says that the differing actions don't require epistemological consistency. You can do both. The next argument is the double line. Either the alternative is so strong that it can overcome the PERM, which means the PERM's always going to swamp the links to the criticism, or the alternative is so weak that it can never overcome the links inherent in the status quo. You'd never be able to solve this. We also tell you PERM do the plan and reject in all other instances. That's always going to be key to solving, and that has additional solvency because it solves the plan first. Cool?
Yeah.
BizCon. The first argument is the U.S. federal the economy is actually low in the status quo. U.S. federal spending in 2013 combined with depressed receipt from weak economy is on track to increase the deficit and result in an increased deficit $850 million. The second argument is that the public held United States debt will exceed 76% of the GDP by 2013. The third argument is that unemployment is stagnant at 7.9. This is actually increased from the December unemployment, which was 7.8. Also, all of their economy high arguments are artificial, and all just because of holiday spending. The fifth argument is the United States economy actually shrank by 0.1% in the last quarter of last year. The next argument is quantitative easing. Quantitative easing and artificially low interest rates are the only things that kept the economy from collapsing in the status quo. That's also the reason that they have any of the uniqueness arguments. The next argument is the global consumer confidence actually dipped at the end of last year. They're strong in the uniqueness debate. The next argument is non-unique. That the upcoming environmental action is perceived is Obama's committed to action. This happened in his inaugural and in his State of the Union. The next argument is the Vice President Joe Biden reaffirmed Obama's goals February 4th. The next argument is that 9 northeastern states and the Mid-Atlantic states have agreed on Thursday to strengthen their emissions on power plants. That always would have led to these impacts. The next argument is non-unique. The plan action is specific specifies the anticipation which is forthcoming. This is from the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post said this. The next argument is non-unique. This action is perceived as the the administration is perceived as the anti-coal and pro-environment, right? right now, and they already think that anti-environment regulations are coming. The next argument is no link the carbon limits empirical action by other actors, and these haven't triggered the impacts. Look to the EU system and California cap and trade. The next argument is no link the EPA regulations have caused any of their impact. The next argument is no link carbon reduction is feasible in the current climate. No bad businesses aren't going to panic. This is all of our solvency arguments. The next argument is the link-term business require a version of global warming. Unchecked global warming is always going to kill the economy, and business leaders all agree to this. The next argument is the link-term plan resolves the question of what regulation is forthcoming, which decreases the amount of uncertainty. The next argument is turn plan actually increases investment, which businesses actually like. The next argument is turn that this increases technology sharing between the countries. It gives the United States an ability to export their technology to other countries. They also don't have any internal links because 2008 empirically denies any other impacts. We also tell you the businesses are totally resilient. They have the ability to grow back again. That means they don't get any of their turn case arguments counterplan. The first argument is that businesses are always going to say no because it's super bad for them. That means they don't get any of their perception links. They can solve any of the affirmative. They also can't solve advantage one because it's not a hardline policy. It looks like the United States has to devolve to the businesses and actually has to ask the businesses before they act. I mean, it doesn't look like if it looks like we're still putting our economic concerns first, we're never able to solve them. It also means that other countries are going to model this policy, which means that other countries are always going to ask their businesses first. That means no environmental regulation ever happens. That means no modeling happens. And a result of this, they're also in a double bind. Either they don't solve any of the advantages, or they're always going to link back to business confidence. They also can't solve for any of the advantage too, because one, there's a risk that businesses say no, which means they never pass the plan at all. There's also a risk that this doesn't solve back for the EU because it doesn't look like the United States is taking a hardline stance, which is what the EU has asked for. They say that this is always going to avoid the dissat, but we tell you that the dissat always still happens. They also make these civil society arguments, but we tell you they never arrive at regulation, so they don't have the ability to solve this. Also, the EPA does it. Also, we tell you that there's a propensity that they lead to changes in the regulations, so we tell you that these changes in the regulations are always going to be worse and lead to loopholes for businesses, meaning any type of environmental model policy is always going to have loopholes for businesses.
All relevant stakeholders never all agree with each other.
All relevant stakeholders will never all agree with each other. That means at least there's a risk of a time frame deficit, which means particulate matter happens in the meantime. Advantage one. I'm not reading the new right now. They say that we don't have the ability to solve methane. They're conceding our momentum argument. That means we generate a momentum to actually solve other environmental problems. That means that's solved after the plan is passed. So they say that we don't give you an exact amount. We don't give you an exact number. And Joe's arguments, they're coming from a specific UN study. We give you a specific number. That's just about as specific it's going to get because we don't really.
Extend that we have till 2016.
Extend that we have until 2016. Katie doesn't think that was a lie. She says the alternate technologies are always going to be able to solve in France and Japan. They're conceding that this isn't enough. The United States has to take an action in order for this to ever be modeled. They say the EU is going to be solving advantage one faster. They're not responding to any of our arguments about how the U.S. has to act because they're the largest emitter. Also, the United States is getting other countries to act. They say it'll never be internationally modeled because it's based on a local concept. They're conceding our arguments about things like Doha. People give excuses because the United States isn't acting for reasons they don't have to act on. And advantage two, they say that this is coming in the status quo. Our argument is that the APC, the airplane standards from a couple weeks ago, that uniqueness argument is always going to be preferred. Also, we tell you that there's starting negotiations right now, but they're starting negotiations on the wrong foot. If they don't resolve this environmental standard, that's always going to lead to infighting, which is always going to lead to a splintered policy, and meaning that any type of resolution between the EU is always going to be watered down and not actually have any ability to solve. That's always an answer to any of their bilateral talks, since these bilateral talks will always be watered down in the status quo unless we resolve the main issue. They're conceding the arguments that the main issue between the EU and the United States is this environmental regulation. They say you have to have a high threshold. I don't really think that makes sense, Joe. They probably should have read defense if they want to go for these arguments. Extend the links and the internal links so that we can still go for them because they don't make any arguments. The international cooperation between the EU and the U.S. is always going to keep a check back to the economy and hedge.
No, but I want to
Yeah. No, yeah.
your home first. Andy.
Probably.
Okay, so if I were to, so let's say I make cookies in my house.
Okay.
Yeah? So I make cookies in the oven,
Uh-huh.
so the kitchen smells like cookies, right?
I would assume.
So if my living room is right next to the kitchen, my living room probably smells like cookies, right?
Probably.
Yeah. So when you put things in the air, they dissipate, right? That's how basic chemistry, physics
Well, we've
works,
established
right?
that we're dumb about that, but I would guess yes.
Why the U.S. is key? If carbon dioxide emissions go everywhere.
Can I answer? Think about a house with multiple ovens. If you cut off the cookies from one of the ovens, there will be less net cookie smell.
Order. BizCon. Counter plan. Receipt and overview. And one advanced two. There will be cross applications from the receipt to the case flow.
I'm gonna need that again.
Disadvantage.
Yeah.
Counter plan.
Yeah.
Receipt with an overview. And I'll signpost where I am on the case flow. I just put it down, but I'll pop it around. And then advantage one, advantage two. There will be cross applications. I will flag them, flow them on multiple sheets. Is that good, Emily?
Yeah. There we go.
Of course, the district manager talks about the EPA regulations. Don't call the don't completely car you say that only because it costs doesn't cause industry panic because it's the comes to state the U.S. and you no ability for them to generate offers off of this flow. We're going to be winning these for links the impacts on the strategic debate. Counter plan not going for it. It's conditional. It does code. You can't stick us with it. No rhetorical arguments about how we can't get down things. Conditionality means we get to do that. Overview. Your email mouths, Jim, are going to say the policy mouths are far more specific than the generic argument that Lucy Clark comes up within their prep time. We have more specific reasons as to why the specific method of solving that the one NC engages in is capable of solving back the specific instance of a degree 5 politics that the one NC engages in. This specific solvency mechanism, specific intellectual means that none of our alternative solvency turns into no solvency arguments can apply to the world of the alternative because we are focused on the specific issue. In addition, this means provide alternative solvency mechanisms don't have to overcome the entire system of biopower, but instead we have to create an envelope space that exists outside of it for individuals to realize agency which solves back the implications that we isolate it for. The more no arguments about the MMO, the only defense the only offense coming off this flow is the biopower natural arguments. Too bad you can see the entire effect level of the case says that we control the internal link to genesis, we run value life, which means that individuals become disposable populated populations, even though it makes lots of enough probably makes your advantage 2 impacts happen on a shorter time frame. In addition, we say that the modifications internal link to advantage 1 because when things are commodified, this is the root cause of the environmental destruction that's happening within the world. All these status companies, the critique is going to solve the root cause of the impacts of the 1AC. Framework? I think he's doing a really good job giving you specific arguments as to why epistemology underpins and informs practice. We say the ways in which we view the world limiting policies are not neutrally constructed within the effective state space from instead influenced by the social norms of the state society that we live in. We first have to think that something is possible in order to make a policy change. In order for it to become possible, we say that right now certain policy options are excluded, certain methods of thinking are excluded because they don't conform to the dominant power structures and the dominant knowledge discourses that are used within the scientific realm of biopolitics. This incentivizing avoidance means that we don't view multiple alternatives as being possible. Or one of the advocacy makes fundamental shift in the way in which we view methodology, making up new and bringing new methodologies in the world of 1AC. You say the 1AC have a good method. Look, you don't need to go to thesis dissertation and say, look, my conclusions justify the method that I use. You have to justify why the method is accurate before you're capable of using that to justify the conclusion that your method isn't accurate. It means none of your truth can be contained by face value, which means that you don't get any offense on any of those claims at all. Next, you say race to the bottom. Argument is the race to the bottom. We say that specific intellectual engagement within 1AC is uniquely within the 1AC is uniquely go to the instance of brief politics. This allows us to see the way structural violence interact with individuals and how that shapes normalizing power structures that lead to dehumanization. We articulate that there's a solution to this. It's understand the ways in which power systems function and the ways in which we relate to those capable of solving back. Alternative solvency means we're capable of doing this. You say action to that. Our critique doesn't prohibit all action. We just say your 1AC. The assumptions are bad. Biopower inevitable. Actually, I want to go. Cross-apply the link debate. The 1AC's regulation of CO2 is the new twist on green neoliberalism. We are saying that the way we should try to control the resources is this way. They're trying to control the way that people move about the world and within a system, within the system of global warming, how people get access to food, how people move with their relationships ahead. Those things are all controlled management and politics of life. Which leads to the impacts that we will now isolate. You say biopower inevitable. Actually, I'm going to go to the solvency argument. This will make more sense then. Short overview on alternative solvency. You're in the argument saying that we can't solve obstructions that obstructions that exist within the real world and not people having skill over solvency. Well, that doesn't matter. We articulate that the 1NC is the speech after our solvency is predicated on this. We say that the norms of power capable of functioning, these norms of society structure are capable deconstructed from any point if we refuse to engage within these normalizing systems. It means that we can break them down from the inside. We articulate specifically intellectual solvency is capable of doing this because it allows us to understand the world in which we have within the power structure, allows us to understand our own agency and how that interacts with the system around us. This allows us to activate agency and not simply be the disposable tools that we isolate within the world, within the world of the impact, which means we don't have to overcome the entirety of biopolitics, only understand how individuals can engage with which is capable of solving back for agency, which prevents the impacts from happening. You said we don't solve the world post all cross from above. Terms. Alternatives capable of solving entirely by itself because we create the discovery, because we create the discursive shit that is necessary. Calls back to the French way. In addition, we say that the permutation has a significant correspondence to our self-born and solve the argument that the institutional focus fails because it obscures power relations by focusing on our large systems of domination instead of individual action. This idea that we have to focus on the systems of domination, the large systems that exist within society, trade off with our understanding that we as individuals have power and agency within the political context that we live in. This means that you obscure the way biopolitics functions and makes resistance against in the future impossible. Permutation, the only risk of permutation links. You say permutation plan reject biopolitical assumptions. Specifically space, in addition to the ways in which the one impacts affects immense populations to create fear mongering in order to make individuals simply cause of the state prove that what he sees biopolitical assumptions are entrenched within all other arguments. If you disregard biopolitics, you don't make your impact claims because you're all because your epistemology can be justified. In addition, we say that 1% residual risk or rate means that individuals are incapable of seeing this, which means that you're capable of solving back the impacts, which is going to outweigh any benefits of what he sees, which we control the internal link. You say Butler. Butler says epistemological consistency. That doesn't jive with the specific intellectual insolvency that we're reading on the critique flow. This is not just a reject alternative. This is a very specific alternative grounded in the literature base that says that specific intellectualism, understanding of the ways in which we as individuals interact with society on an individual level, disengage from institutions is uniquely key because we can't do these things when we're engaged with institutions because it creates this blinded focus. You say double lines? Alternatives capable of solving on its own because we disregard because we break free of the idea that we're only capable of acting within institutions and we're only capable of having agency within those structures. We have to undermine the catastrophic claims of the one AC in order to realize that they're not necessarily binded by the ways in which the state acts. The state doesn't necessarily control the internal links to our life or to our value of life. This is the only way to break free of the state capable of creating individual agency. No individual agency with permutation means you don't solve. You say perm solve all their instances. We isolate that specific intellectualism is key in every instance. In this instance specifically, to understand the way in which green biopolitics functions within the world of the YC. Okay, go back to biopolitics inevitable. Look, this does not matter. Even if biopolitics is inevitable, it doesn't mean that we still can't understand our relation to biopolitics and create spaces of agency that exist outside of it. Cross-line alternative solving argument that says that we are the center and the locus of power. This means I'm capable of falling back to this. Furthermore, biopolitics is not inevitable. We say that the truth claims of the state are predicated on them being this benevolent hegemon that's capable of coming in and saving us from extinction, saving us from ourselves. This is why we believe biopower is inevitable. This is because of these claims, breaking free of them and understanding the different types of epistemologies and different ways of interacting with the world exist means that we're capable of doing this. You say give instances of traffic lights in some instances. Even if some instances of biopolitics are good, you're not showing that this instance, the 1AC's instance of biopolitics is good. We said the management of populations is uniquely creating a situation in which individuals can't access agency. Also, understanding that the specific intellectualism solves back to this, because understanding our relationship with the system is really capable of fixing all of those things. You say social services, stop-life healthcare. These things can exist in the world without biopolitics. We simply have to understand the way in the world that we as individuals take. Okay? Indians one. Carbon limits and atmospheres, you can't quantify what you need to solve. You can't solve refineries and methane corporations from China and India or Russia, and climate change can't be modeled so you don't get a momentum arguments. Advantage 2. What? On advantage 2. EPA not perceived by the EU. They don't follow the Clean Air Act or the DDT ban. The status quo does not solve for advantage. The status quo solves for is solving for advantage 2?
Yeah.
Status quo solves for advantage 2. Abundance and environmental regulations were coming within the world of the status quo. Cool. Also the critique internally with link terms and outweighs.
Alright. The case in the K. Actually, the K and then the case. Ready for it? Okay. Criticism functions as an internal link term to the 1AC independently outweighs the residual net benefit that the 1AC can provide. I don't think that you're winning a risk of offense coming out of the MG, which indicates that a 1% risk that you link to this criticism will independently outweigh any PMR magic that could possibly happen. commodification that you concede is the root. You concede an argument that says that commodification is the root cause of your impacts, which means that even if you solve the instance of the 1AC, you are incapable of solving instances of biopower in the future. We say that you create a system of commodification that extends over other commodifications of individuals as well as resources. Policies of commodification call for forcing governmental action on people and can be instances of a truly benevolent dictator, but are more likely the instance of the opposite, where the dictator takes advantage of the vulnerability of the people and takes advantage of individuals who put their trust and reliance on the dictator, which means that you may create some good in some instances, but inevitably you create and recreate the harm that allows for genocide, that allows for a purification of a population. You allow for the ethic of ethnic cleansing because you create a system where some individuals are valued, some individuals are devalued. Those who contribute to the climate problem become problems of our society, but those who contribute to solving climate, those who contribute to mitigating climate change and warming are allowed to exist. When you create this dichotomy between the good and the valued, and between the devalued, then you allow violence to be justified against those who are devalued. You allow commodification of resources to exist. You allow rights stripping and devaluation of life. You allow violence to be justified against people as well as the environment. The devaluation of people and the environment are inevitable in the method of the 1AC. Additionally, you cause extinction. You concede an extinction level scenario that says the wars are waged at the level of the population because individuals become pawns capable of being sacrificed. This internally linked turns and advantage two, but it also means that an impact turns advantage one because wars are, but it also short circuits advantage one because wars are waged at the level of populations. While more violence is justified before the impacts of advantage one can happen. You say that 2016 is the point of no return, but there is still a amount of violence that can happen before you reach the terminal impact of your 1AC, which means that you always subsume the time frame of the 1AC and the impacts of violence against people who are capable of solving things like climate change happens. You cannot have, if you do not have actors to solve climate change, then you cannot solve the problem, which means that only in the instance of the 1AC do you prevent any residual solvency of climate change. You say that the 1AC itself, extinction doesn't matter in a world of no value to life. No value to life means no impact to death, but only that when all violence can be justified against individuals because they are literally objects and pawns of the state, then it means that all violence, it means that wiping out a population means nothing. Also, you say that the 1AC justifies your methodology. This is like saying that your experimental results justify why your procedure was good. For example, if I am in my laboratory and I mix up a whole bunch of chemicals and I create something beneficial, like I create something good, and it helps some people, guess what? I can't reproduce that unless I know what chemicals I mixed together. You are doing the exact thing. You're saying, look, what we produced was really good, but guess what? We don't know how you got there. If we can't justify how you got there, you can't just say what we produced was good. It doesn't matter if you can't reproduce it. Producing it one time does not mean that your method was good. It does not mean that your procedure was okay. It just means that you got one good result. I think that's very clear. Additionally, we don't need to win the biopower is not inevitable. We should still know our relationship to it, even if it is inevitable. Also, the case subsumes a faster time frame and larger magnitude impacts that are much more probable because you can see several solvency arguments that indicate that you link to our criticism. Also, the criticism impacts are reverse causal. The 1AC impacts can be caused by anything and solved by many things, but the K impacts are triggered uniquely by the instance of the 1AC, which is proven by our conceded solvency methods of the specific intellectual in this instance. Permutation, dissent to the permutation outweighs the risk of a net benefit. How your institutional focus fails because it trades off with individual focus and obscures our understanding of biopower. Your Butler curve would only work in the worlds of the 1AC is good, but you're conceding arguments that say that the status quo solves your app and the carbon leaders, which means that you can never solve your app. You also can't solve methane and climate change, and you don't get any modeling, which means you don't get any momentum. I don't know why you concede those arguments. It's like you want to give us violence.
It's one person thing. And a minute. Which like they do.
Cool. Advantage 1, advantage 2, then the K debate. And on the K debate, I'm going first to the alternative.
we get clean access to the extinction scenarios, they're going to lose the biopower inevitability debate. They will not be able to solve because they do not, they miss it because they mishandled the double bind. That easy win for Lewis and Clark on advantage 1. You're making these methane arguments, but but you're not answering Emily's answers that indicate that we actually solve back through this with the use of green technology. You're indicating that we get a massive induction of green technology. Your argument that other countries have green technology now is not responsive to our original scenario, which is the green technology is not cost competitive. We would make it cost competitive over the future. That is absolutely an unresponsive to argument. We indicate that would be able to solve back for all of global warming. We are rocking the cookies analogy, as I think everybody in this room knows, which indicates that we're capable of solving back for the entirety of this position. You put absolutely no game on this question. We're also solving for the most popular,
I think that the extrapolation of, well, first, I think that any extension of green technology was not made by Emily. But secondly, I think the extrapolation of green technology being cost competitive in the future is not an extrapolation that is made in the context of the momentum arguments that we are making.
I don't know, that's a lot of words, and I'm not sure exactly what you're saying. I'm extending the PMC...
Emily didn't make that argument.
Yeah, she did, though. Emily extends that we're going to solve back for green tech. Like, that link that she's extending is we make it cost competitive in the long term. Under consideration, I'm sure. Yeah, and we create momentum. Emily's also extending the momentum arguments go down to the impact level. Now you're not doing listen. Clearly, you think you know a whole lot more about science, but in the round, it doesn't sound very differently. You're just screaming louder that we're wrong. You're conceding the arguments that we have to act by 2016, which is absolutely conceded. You don't even make an argument on that, which indicates that we need to be able to act with global warming. You're also conceding the entirety of the particulate matter story. That is absolutely devastating for you. That means that we're actually able to solve for 50,000 deaths in the United States annually. You have absolutely no game on that question. You're also conceding that that's a structural impact and should be prioritized. We're also putting a substantial risk of global warming because you're just not interacting. You're just saying we're wrong. EU relations. We're winning the arguments on whether or not this scene is coming. Your arguments that this is perceived. Your new arguments that the EPA doesn't perceive this is absolutely not true. You're extending through ink. We're making link arguments coming out of the PMC that indicate this directly solves back for the concerns that the EU actually has. We're at the very least winning the arguments that we stop the domestic pressure that's coming on these countries. That is the only thing derailing these bilateral trade talks to the status quo. You have no terminal defense here. You have no terminal defense here. Your argument that the regulations are coming isn't answered by the fact that the EPA is taxing us right now, which indicates that at the very least the EU rather is taxing us right now, which very least indicates that the EU doesn't think they're coming. You're saying the entirety of the link level. Certainly, these were not very good arguments, but that's probably the reason you guys should read impact defense instead of just declaring that to be true. They're conceding internal link scenarios to get us nuclear war. They get us nuclear war on the alt page. Go to the double bind argument. The B subpoint indicates that unless you're able to solve the other residual occurrences of policies like plan, that if the plan cannot function in the face of the perm, it cannot function in the face of other residual causes like plan. Your argumentation on why we're not able to solve the permutation is because we don't reject an institutional focus. You make no argument. You do not even try to make an argument that we will reject an institutional focus in every other instance. You're conceding arguments that there are going to be other policies that inevitably occur, which is absolutely damning to you on this point. You don't even make the argument or attempt to make the argument that the reason we can't solve the perm wouldn't naturally occur in a world of the alternative. Where is that argument? It's absolutely not there. Emily's telling you that there are numerous other instances of biopower. She's giving you the Slayer example of traffic lights, right? If you don't see a traffic light and then interrogate after listening to this criticism, why are they allowed to say what's red and what's green? They're not solving the criticism per their own analysis, which is absolutely not going to happen because ain't nobody got time for that. Biopower inevitable. You're conceding the management of the environment specifically is 100% inevitable because we're not able to turn back time. This is Sharon 89, and it's an absolutely Slayer argument. You're indicating we've created such massive problems with the environment that the only thing that we can do is manage it and create a state of emergency now. That is a cold, conceded argument, which indicates that all of your specificity, all of your arguments that indicate that are so much better than what Lewis and Clark come up with because you have policy shells ready for you are not answering this argument, which indicate that which indicate that you're fundamentally non-responsive to this argument. Listen, global warming's happening. There's a bunch of science things that Katie could explain. The condors are probably pretty screwed. We've really messed up the environment, and you're conceding that 100%, which concedes that the only way to do it is to manage, which means that other occurrences of plan are inevitable. You're also conceding that biopower is inevitable because it's inevitable in the structures of state power. This is Emily's argument. You can't undermine these structures at any point. The traffic light has an implicit assumption that they're allowed to say stop, they're allowed to say go, allowed to say caution. You're not undermining these assumptions, but the very fact that you allow state power to continue to function means that you can't solve this criticism. Listen, your argument is you're losing solvency for this criticism on the other page at the point where you say you need to question institutional, but you don't say that we always will question institutional. You're also losing the argument here because you're losing the inevitability debate of the occurrence of the links.
The fact that they concede that biopower biopower looks good means their
The-
speech act doesn't solve
The
these
fact that you
problems
concede
in
that
their minds.
biopower looks good and everybody in this round knows the traffic lights are dope and we should continue social services indicates that your speech act hasn't solved for anyone in this round. You're also conceding impact terms, which indicate we're key to stopping a ton of people from solving this instance of solving through other instances of biopower through social services. You're also conceding technology and chemical and medicine and other things. Listen, your best argument here is that we only collapse some biopower, but not all of it. That is a reason why the structures would maintain. It is a reason why if you have any risk of solving back for biopower, you would collapse the good shit too. You're never able to solve. We stop extinction. Game, set, match.
I study science.
Better get actual
That's all.
So long for you.